what's up, guys? My name's Alexis, your host of Praises in the Pod, and I am super excited to do part 2 of Brandon and Jess's story. It has been amazing so far. They had a skedaddle, but we already had it pre-recorded and everything else, so I'm going to use this intro to start off part 2. We're going to start off in prayer, and we're going to jump right in. So here we go. Lord Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for all your many blessings, dear God. I pray that this story, Lord, is used to glorify you in your life and what all you have done in their life, Lord. I pray that you just use this episode in a mighty way. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
She goes inside and I look, I was like, well, we got something here.
Got a chance.
And so she comes out, she's like, she says she doesn't want to talk to you. And I was like, I just want to meet Natalie. And she was like, yeah, she says she doesn't want to talk to you. So turned around, left, drove to Columbus, 2.5 hours away. And then we drove back and drove back. And that was it. I was like, all right, yeah, this is done. And found out months later, some guy reached out to me and he was like, hey, did you ever date Natalie Smith? And I'm like, if you want to call it that, yeah, sure. And he was like, well, this is who it was. And he sent me a picture of who it was.
Yeah, because, I've been on the edge of the seat. This is good.
He shows me. He was like, yeah, so this girl named Brittany that I went to high school was playing her, and also this other Brittany girl. And I was like, that's probably who was on the PT cruise and everything. That's who it was. And I was like, okay, so that was past. But as soon as I got back, that's when I met my second wife and at Gingy, and we just kind of hit it off. And that was one of the things. Again, I was heartbroken and just looking for somebody to love me, and should have never happened. But we started dating and hanging out, and this is the part of my life I was not a very good Christian. Like, I was not reading the Bible. I was not going to church. I was completely different. I started cussing a lot. Like, I was just a different person, different Brandon. And so we started hanging out and everything, and she moved in with me. I was not living the type of life that I would normally live. She was living an even different life. Yeah. So, she
wasn't pushing you back towards that life.
He was out of character, and then he went for somebody that was kind of even different than what he...
Yeah. And so she, was into substances, and, while I was working at night and stuff, she'd have guys over at the apartment and stuff. So a lot of things, again, I should have ended this, but then we ended up getting pregnant, finding out that we were having Jade in March of 2016. And
they had been together for like 3 months when she found out she was pregnant, and she's pretty clear from the beginning that like she's not really looking for anything serious, but he's kind of just coasting and trying to get through this difficult time that he's in.
And I was working night shift, and a certain guy that she had relations with in the past would start coming over to the house and everything. And
when he would say things like, I'm not comfortable with that, she would say things like, well, I'm not your ex. Like, you're just damaged because of what happened to you, so you don't trust me. Yeah. But, that's you bringing into that. So.
Yeah, she was definitely targeting my lack of trust. And there's a lot more situations where, like this, and then even some that I wouldn't trust her, and maybe she wasn't doing anything wrong, but I just could not trust. Oh, it was so hard at this time to be a cop. I mean, my entire 5 years of being a cop, I was, I guess, just mentally drained, emotionally drained. I was tormented because I didn't know what was going on at home and all this other stuff.
And when she got pregnant, towards the middle or end of her pregnancy, she's like, you know what? I think I do want to settle down.
Yeah, let's do this.
And have a family.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It's like, we're already here. I'm pregnant. Let's have a family. Thing. And so they got married when she was 8 months pregnant.
So we found out we were having Jade in March. And then in June 26th of 2016, or 27th, one of those 2 days, that's when I got diagnosed with cancer. And so basically I had a lump in my groin. Cops, more back in the day, we would have the duty belt and then our magazine pouch, or I had a magazine pouch for my firearm. Mine was vertical just because it was easier to take out if I needed it. And every time I'd sit down in my car or anywhere, it would dig into my groin. And so I started noticing this little lump forming in my groin, and I was like, what is that? I just thought, I hated going to the doctor. Always have. And so I was like, oh, it must just be a blood clot. Newsflash, blood clots are still very, very important.
As you said that, I'm like, hang on, that's pretty bad, too.
I mean, I didn't realize it. I was like, it's just a blood clot, no big deal. And so I dealt with it for 1.5 years, just sitting there, and it would start to hurt and everything like that. my second wife, she was like, you need to go get that checked out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, I'm not. And she would like bug me, go get it checked out. So I went and got it checked out. And mind you, growing up, I was a hypochondriac. Like if it showed up on TV, I had it. Tumor, I had the brain tumor. Mesothelioma, I had it. Even though I never was around paint or any kind of asbestos or anything like that, I had mesothelioma. And so I would always tell my mom, I got cancer. I can't. No, you don't have cancer, Brandon. I go to the doctor and find out I have stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's like stage 3E. It was in 7 areas of my body. Very close to being stage 4. I was like,
it's like you just found out you're gonna be a dad, and then you find out you have stage 3.
I was like, holy crap! So I looked at my mom. I was like, told you I had cancer. We got the prognosis, and they were like, look, you know, you're gonna be fine. You know, we'll start some chemos. I had to do 8 rounds of chemo, and you know, it's going to take a while because it's in a lot of areas of your body. The doctor said, I'm glad you already have a kid on the way because you probably will never have kids again after the chemo. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Okay. And I'm somebody I always wanted to be a dad, you know, my whole life. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. And so I started thinking like, God, you know, praying. I was starting to get back into praying because you find out you got cancer, you know, that changes things. I was like, what's the purpose for this and everything? So I started getting back in it, but you know, and I'd say, you know, I want to start reading the Bible more, and I'll start praying, going to church and everything. But my wife at the time was like, no, she didn't want anything to do with that. So we started the chemo. I would do it every other Thursday, and I did it for about 8 months. And the first 6 were very easy. They put a port in. I'd go and I'd sit there for 5 hours, and they would do 4 chemo treatment, like 4 different medicines. So after 2 treatments, after every 2 treatments, I'd go back to the doctor and they'd do scans and stuff. And after my second treatment, I went to the doctor. They did a PET scan. They did a CAT scan. They did my blood work. And they were like, your blood work looks fine. Looks perfect. And I was like, okay, cool. And they were like, they did the scans and everything. And they said, there's also no trace of cancer anywhere. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah, it's almost like you never even had it. Like, that's crazy. And I was like, that's God. I don't know how else you tell me I have to go through 12 rounds of these things. And after only 2 of them, it's completely gone.
Now, you said 8 months, though. So you took one and then a few months later? Oh.
Yeah, so I told her, I was like, so that means I don't have to do any more chemo. She was like, no, we're still going to go through all of it just to make sure it doesn't come back.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm not one of those people that thinks every little thing's a miracle.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not one of those things. Yeah, I'm not one of those people that thinks that God's just always going to do miracles, because if that's the case, they're not miracles if they happen all the time. But in my life, that is an instance where I said, okay, that's a miracle.
Absolutely.
Finished all the chemos and everything. Everything was clear. February 1st of 17, they were like, yep, you're in remission. You're good to go. And so.
Got to ring the bell.
Yeah, got to ring the bell. And then, but then that's when we're like, I think in October of 16, I still had cancer. That's when we had Jade, And so once I was over with that, went back to work and just kind of started living our life, raising Jade and everything. December 2018, that's when I started noticing that there were some things going on that shouldn't have been going on. Person decided anymore they didn't want to be married, and so we started hanging out with her friends, and she mostly started hanging out with her friends, but it became like a constant thing, and didn't really want anything to do with me anymore. And so I had trust issues, so I start questioning everything, and it's like attacking those, like, oh, no, you're just crazy, you're just paranoid and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, no, something's going on. And again, I'm sparing details. But I started investigating, looking at phone records of my ex-wife and stuff like that, and noticing a certain phone number showing up all the time. And but through probably 2 or 3 months of investigating, eventually came to the head. I figured out. My Nana called me one day. And I was like, Nana, and I'm working. I'm like, Nana, I'm freaking out. In my personal investigation, I used my computer at work to look up this phone number, and then found out who the phone number belonged to, and it was her best friend's boyfriend. Oh. Yeah. And I was like, okay. And that's kind of who I figured it was, because she was hanging out with these people all the time. And then I used my computer 2 more times to find out the address and all that stuff. And she was constantly going to Macon. And this guy lived in Macon. I was like, okay. And so my nana was like, let me go to that address. And I was like, no, it's not. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do anything like that. She was like, let me go and see if her car's there. I was like, okay, fine. So she goes, sends me a picture with her car in this guy's driveway. And so I was like, that's it. And I break down. I'll go and tell my sarge, I was like, look, this is what I'm going through. Because they all knew something was up because I started losing weight. I was not normal jokester Brandon and everything. And I was like, look, I'm going, my wife's having an affair. And I was like, I'm going through all this. And I was like, and just so you know, I used my computer, to find out some stuff, which one against PD policy to use your computer for work, for business reasons, or for personal reasons. And I was like, so I used my computer. And he was like, okay, well, I appreciate you telling me. I'll pass it on to the chief. And so he did. So they took me off the road. And I went and confronted her, and I was like, look, I know, and just the normal, like, oh, that's not true, and she ended up leaving. GBI actually came in because what I did was also against the law. And so GBI came in, and they were like, hey, we're going to interview you. We're going to investigate the situation. We're going to interview you. We're going to interview her, the boyfriend. I was like, okay, fine. So they did all that, and they came back. My chief wasn't going to fire me, okay, because I was honest about it all. And everybody was telling me not to be honest. Like my best friends at the PD, they were like, Brandon, don't say, like, they're not going to find out. Don't say anything. And I was like, no, I'm going to be honest. The process for them is they have to go to the district attorney and say, hey, this is what we got. We, give their recommendation. And so they gave the recommendation to the DA at the time of Houston County and said, hey, we don't recommend charges. The DA was like, nope, I'm taking them to grand jury for 3 felonies.
Oh my gosh.
And so when they came back, I was like, are you kidding me? My career was just starting. Like, I had been there for 5 years. Like, I started getting the hang of things, and my chief called me in the office one day and was like, hey, DA is taking you to grand jury for 3 felonies. So I got to fire you.
Oh,
and
my
I was
gosh.
like, are you kidding me? And I was like, I get it.
In the midst of
all this going on. Yeah.
Like the affair of your wife and all
this
stuff.
Yeah, that was all fresh.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, I understand. Is what it is. I had a bad call at work too one time. I guess I can dive into that because that ended up being a major issue for me. So February of 19. So while all this was going on, before I had, turned myself in and everything, we had a shift where our radios went out. And so we couldn't contact each other, like the cops, on the road. We couldn't communicate with each other, couldn't communicate with EMS, fire, anything. And so all we could really see is, like, the dispatchers would call us and say, hey, I need you to go to this call. Or on our computers, we could see where they were dispatching us. But I was heading back and I just happened to pull up because I had to go do work on some reports and stuff at the PD. And I happened to pull up my computer, and I saw a call holding, and it was a dog bite. And so I pulled up the notes, and it was like 6-year-old boy bitten by dog, people going crazy and stuff like this. And I called my Sarge. I said, hey, Sarge, look at this call. He pulled it up, and he was like, let me look at it and reading and everything. He was like, all right, yeah, go ahead. And I said, run code. Code 3 was license sirens. He said, run code. So I flipped them on, and I haul tail, and I get down there, and I pull up, and I hear the screaming, and I'm the first one there. And I hear screaming, and I go across to my left and knock on the door, no one. And then I go to my right, and someone comes around the house, and they're like, over here. So I run over there, and as I'm running, the dog, a big white pit bull, comes up and meets me at the gate and just, barking its head off, just showing its teeth and everything, acting like it's about to come and get me. And so I stop, I draw down on him, because I'm like, if this thing comes and attack me, I'm shooting it.
Yeah.
And 2 other cops show up, they draw down on them as well. And I'm like, y'all worry about the dog. I'm going to go find the kid. And they're like, yeah, we got it. So they start, like, distracting the dog and everything. And I go around, I go to the backyard, and I see everyone on a trampoline. And they had, like, the nets up and everything. And at this point, there were probably 4 or 5 more officers that showed up. And they're all dealing with the dog. And so I run at the trampoline, and I jump into the trampoline inside the net. And when I get in there, I notice that the people are on the outside of the net. And so I'm, like, jumping around. And as I'm on the trampoline, this dog gets over there and is, like, trying to bite me through the bottom of the trampoline. And so my buddy, Josh Warren, he's got a broom handle or something. I think it was a broom handle. And he starts trying to hit the dog to get it out from under the trampoline because I didn't want to jump down and it get me. And this lady is sitting on the side of the trampoline and holding this boy, 6-year-old boy, and she's screaming, has blood all over her. And this may get a little graphic, but it was the hardest call I had ever gone through. And this boy is just kind of lifeless in her lap. And she's screaming and everything. And I say, give me the boy. And I could see through his arms. I could see through his legs. Like he was messed up. And I said, give me the boy. And she was like, okay. So I grab him and I go running back towards the front. Again, the only thing was in my mind was like, I can't call EMS. I can't say anything to EMS. So I don't know where they are. You know, they were on the way and I don't know where they are. And so I tell Sarge, I was like, Sarge, I'm taking him to the hospital. I was like, I don't have time to sit here and wait. I don't know where EMS is. He was like, good idea, go. So I buckle him in the back seat and I tail off. As I'm pulling out of the neighborhood, EMS is coming in. The whole time I'm reaching back, you know, and I'm like, it's all right, buddy, you know, and he would make like a little, like a whimper, you know, and I'm like, it's all right, buddy, it's all right, it's all right. I'm like, just hang in there, and I'm going. And as I'm pulling on the hospital drive, I don't hear him anymore. And I'm like, I start like breaking down. I'm like, this boy just died in my car. You know, I was like, and so I pull on the hospital drive. I pull into the ER and I grab him and I'm like, okay, he's alive. So I grab him and I take him inside and I tell him everything that's going on. And I'm just like pacing back and forth. I'm like, just trying to like, you know, just praying and everything and praying for the boy. It was crazy because after I kind of get done pacing and everything and he's in their hands, I go to walk out and the EMT that was driving the EMS, they ended up turning around and came up there and he confronted me. He was like, don't ever do that again. I was like, do what? And he was like, we were coming. You wait for us next time. And I was like, dude, get out of my face because one, our radios aren't working. I didn't know you were coming. I didn't know where you were. I said, I did what I had to do. And I pushed past him and I left and ended up finding out that they ended up killing the dog because he was just, the dog was just out going crazy. And later on found out that they ended up flying that boy to Atlanta, you know, saved his legs and everything. Like he ended up making a full recovery. And I had told everybody about the EMT and everything. So my sergeant came up to me one day and he, it was actually after I had gotten fired. Like this was months later. And he was like, Brandon, Brandon, you remember that call? And I was like, yeah. He was like, well, I just want to let you know that a doctor got in touch with us. And he said that if you wouldn't have did what you did that day, he wouldn't have survived.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, and I really appreciated that. And the supervisor of EMS actually got with me. He said, sorry about that. You know, that was uncalled for. And so that was the hardest
absolutely
call. But why did I get on that?
Just like a picture of just like the mental.
Yeah, just everything. Yeah. And at that same
through.
time, the next few months were just a lot of back and forth. We actually ended up getting back together because it was like, hey, you know, I think she just kind of needed me for an apartment. I was working at Tractor Supply Warehouse at this time because I just needed a job. And I was like 3 weeks living in this apartment with her. And I was like, look, I'm done. Because she's going out and still hanging with this dude that she cheated on me with. And I was like, I'm done. So I leave and everything. And then just going through it, I ended up getting a trailer that I rented in Warner Robins. And then that's actually why I was at Walmart, because I started living in this trailer and I needed some blinds. And
oh my gosh.
I go to Walmart and I'm looking for blinds. And
so the breakup's fresh when y'all
it was
into
like
each other.
It was like 9 months later.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, we had a kid together, and they did do. But so that was, the breakup wasn't as fresh anymore. It was more just frustrations with custody, you know, because she was very much, she's my daughter. You don't care about her, which it wasn't true. You know, I say what goes with her, and you see her when I say you can see her, and stuff like that. So it was just a lot of, at this point, it was just mainly Jade. That was the frustration. But so yeah, that's where we saw each other at Walmart. And I actually told her, and I was like, when we started talking, I was like, look, I live in a trailer. You don't want anything to do with me.
Oh my God.
What I knew of her, because I told you, like in high school, she was the girl that everyone wanted to be with. And so like when I saw her, I'm like, oh, she probably lives in this big old mansion. Parents have these amazing jobs. You know, she don't want little old Brandon Carlson, like this peasant over here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So y'all are both going through very similar things, different, but the same. And then, so I'm guessing you go to church?
Well,
to the church?
So it was funny because I told Sydney, I said, mark my words, I will never love again. Unless I find some jaded single dad who is so sweet and would never hurt a fly. That's
oh my
wording.
gosh.
God said, hold up a second.
Yeah, said bet.
Yeah. So.
And let me interrupt you real quick. But this was the point of time when I was like, this was my deciding moment. Like after I was like, look, I've been through this twice already. And I was praying, like I really started getting more into the Bible. And I don't tell a lot of people, but like I had a moment where I literally had a gun in my head. Like I was ready to call it quits. And the only reason I didn't is because I had Jade.
Yeah.
And I remember praying. It was like, God, you know, my relationships have not gone the way they were supposed to. And I was like, it's because I was searching for what I wanted, not what you wanted for me. Yeah. And I said, and I kept praying. I was like, God, match my desires, whether it's, you know, relationship or whatever, match my desires with your desires. You know, if it is meant for me to get married again, I want the woman that you want me to be with, nothing else. If they're not out there, it is what it is. And it's funny. He gave me what I wanted and what he wanted.
Amen. Hey.
So fast forward, we run into each other at Walmart. We have this conversation. He invites me to start going to therapy, and then he invites me to church. And I actually did bail that Sunday. And It was just because I just felt, first of all, I didn't know anything about this with him. And it's so funny because you hear all this craziness about him. But my perspective is that the Brandon that I'm thinking of is, he is so that kid that never got in trouble in school. He was a police officer. He just doesn't do any wrong. He's just a sweetheart. And, you know, I was feeling a little bit unworthy of going to church with somebody who I didn't feel like knew what it was like to make mistakes and go through hard things. And so I was totally wrong. And so we can be so wrong about people. But I didn't go that first Sunday, but we continued to just talk every single day and talk on the phone.
For hours and hours and hours. But I remember that it was so interesting because I was really starting to open my heart to God and like seeking God. And then here comes Brandon, and he's at a point in his life when we run into each other where he is on fire for God. And I remember one of the things he told me was, at this point in my life, I could be butt naked on the side of the road with nothing. And as long as I have God, I am complete and I'm okay. But it took a lot to get there. Like
a
lot of prayer.
And so I don't know all of this stuff. And I'm thinking like, wow, like I don't know what it would take for me to get to that place. And the more I'm getting to know him, like, yes, I was inspired by him as a person and everything he's been through. But mostly I just saw Jesus all over him. Because one of the things that he said to me that I tell people, because I know it was one of the questions that you asked is like, what would you say to anyone who felt like they were beyond redemption? So he and I are sitting there talking, and I'm telling him how, you know, I want to have God in my life, but I'm afraid because I've made so many mistakes. And, you know, in retrospect and hearing other people's stories, it's not anything that's beyond redemption, but it's amazing how, you know, you can view yourself in a negative light, and that's where you'll stay. But when you start to view yourself the way that God does, it completely changes that. But I was telling him, you know, how I felt about myself and unworthy. And he would tell me like,
and she was going deep. Like, I mean,
I was
telling me all about her life, stuff that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah. Like, I was just telling him about some really challenging things that I'd been through growing up that I had never really told anyone. I bet
that was very like healing too, to actually voice.
It was, you know, for example, I had been sexually assaulted when I was a teenager, and I held a lot of shame with that, and I viewed myself in that light, and I couldn't escape from it for a long time, and just things that I had experienced growing up that I shifted the blame onto myself. And so I'm sitting here telling him all of this, and he tells me that shame is not from God. He's like, that is not from him. And I remember he told me in Genesis, when God looked at everything he created, he said, it is good. He said he knew your name. He knew every decision that you would make. And he said it was good. He said he was talking about you. He was talking about me. He was talking about Tyler. He was talking about Jade's mom. He was talking about, and he said this, and that's where I felt Jesus coming from him, because I'm like,
Yeah, none of that stuff matters. Like
none of that matters, and no one is beyond
you.
redemption. And he's like, you can't let him down because he's so far above it all. Mm-hmm. You can't do anything to earn his love, and you can't do anything to take away his love, because he doesn't love you because of what you've done or what you haven't done. He loves you because of how powerful he is and everything that he can do, not because of anything you can do.
And you don't have to change. You don't have to just come to him.
Just come to him and give it to him, and he will make you into who he wants you to be.
Yes.
It's not like, and that's a confusing thing, because it's not like you're saying you can keep living the way that you're living and that's all he wants. No, but you can let him into your heart, and he will convict you, and he will change the things about you that need to be changed. Yes. So you don't need to feel shameful. You don't need to feel guilty about things you've done, because he knew that we weren't perfect. And that really, like, that is like that defining moment too for me, is I was like, okay. And I remember he asked me, do you want to be saved? And I said, yes. And so we prayed that prayer together on the phone.
Wow.
And that was when I got saved. And
so before y'all started dating?
Yeah.
Well, y'all were kind of in the talking stage.
We had already told each other we liked each other.
We admitted that we liked each other because we had like a mutual friend, a really good friend of his, like an acquaintance of mine. And he had told me that he was talking to him, and he was like, yeah, I told him I was texting with you and talking to you on the phone. And he was like, well, just,
yeah, Darren White.
Guard your heart.
Oh, I know Darren.
Yeah. He said, she does not like you.
Yeah, she don't want nothing to do with you, Brandon.
And he was like, well, I'm not saying she does, but we're talking. And I said, well, actually, I do. And he was like, really?
Oh.
And I was like, wait a minute. And that's when he told me, like, well,
like,
just
score.
so you know, like, I'm living in a trailer right now. I'm trying to get my life together. And I just said, I'm sorry for whatever I did that made you think that I would care.
Yeah.
Because that's not the type of person that I am at all. I'm not beyond redemption. And I realized that in order for me to move forward and live a happy life, I had to find forgiveness. And I was able to do that because I realized that if I'm not beyond redemption, then neither is Ollie's dad. Yep. And I, can pray for him, and I can hope the best for him. And I can pray that Ollie will have both of us in his life. Mm-hmm. And of course, ups and downs, battles of co-parenting, but I do see that. And so it's really awesome. And then just the way that he spoke about, Jade's mom, everything that they had been through, even still to this day, he would say, you are not too far for God's love. Absolutely. And that's probably my favorite thing about him, because up until meeting him, like I said with my client, I had this view of people who were very religious of being judgmental or closed-minded, or he's like, religion is man-made. Mm-hmm. And he's like, a relationship with God is completely different. Yeah. And that really changed a lot for me. I know that God is so powerful, and if he can take someone like me and place me where I am now, then there's no limits to what he can do. It does just make me think, like, I can plant a seed, but I can just sit back and show the love of God in my actions and in the way I am to the people around me, and just hope for that. And
I don't want to take away my responsibility in what happened to me. I 100%, a lot of the things that happened to me were because of decisions that I made. I don't for one bit think that God put me through any of that. Yeah. God didn't want me to get married either of those two times. Mm-hmm. I was not ready for it. And so, but at the same time, I do think that, we probably weren't ready to be with each other. Yeah. Like if we met each other in 8th grade, because we've known each other since 8th grade. If we started dating since 8th grade and been, it may not have worked out, but at the same time, maybe it is. Maybe we were supposed to be together. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, that's what was funny is I tried in my head to be like, stop it. Mm-hmm. You are not ready for another relationship. What are you doing? But it's like, when it is not God's plan, you can't thwart it. Yeah. And when it is God's plan, you cannot stop it. Like, Amen. This was my man. Yeah. Okay. And there was no way around it.
My mom, they were all like, Brandon, no.
There we go.
You've already done this and everything. But I'm telling you, from the moment they met her, they were like, oh, we love her.
Yeah. They were like, never mind. And I remember my sister-in-law now, she was like, Jess, she was like, the thing about Brandon is he would walk through the fire for the people that he loves. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I'm looking at you, and I know that you would too. And that brings me so much comfort. And so yeah, his parents took the time to like invite us over for dinner every week and like get to know me. And then they're like, oh, okay, this is
All
good.
right.
My parents were very weary because they were hurt through seeing me hurt.
Yeah.
Oh, they had nicknames for me.
They did. They weren't ready. They were not ready.
Yeah.
But also, you know this, I was kind of like living a facade, and no one really knew what I was going through in my marriage. And so it came as more of a shock to everyone else than it did me. I was, you know, a lot of times they say that women, like, their heartbreak happens through the relationship, and once it's over, that's when the healing starts. And that's just how it was for me.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of that. I dealt with the heartbreak on my own in silence. And so then when it ended, that's just when everyone else knew. But it was something that I was going through. And so my family was not ready because it was still really fresh for them.
Yeah.
Seeing Jade, especially just with everything that she's gone through, because she has been the one to really go through it, through just all of this, and just the faith that an 8-year-old can have. I mean, every night she falls asleep to Thank God I Do by Lauren Daigle, because that is like her song. And she, you know, when I tell her like, hey, Jade, you know, like no battle is too big for God, she's like, I know.
Amen.
I know. And her verse right now is, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted.
Oh, wow.
Because she knows that, she's like, sometimes I want to say, why would God make me have to go through this? But then I realize he's not making me go through this. I'm going through this, and he's going to use it for his glory. And so I just can't imagine the testimony that that child's going to have one day, because she is strong. And all of our kids are. It's so amazing to see. I mean, Oliver, just the way that he loves, and, you know.
And just real quick on Jade, again, like I said in the beginning, like, we're going to spare details, but there's some substance stuff on her mom's side. And we found out about that in May of last year. And so now we've got custody of Jade. So she's in a place where she can't see her mom. And it's been very tough, very tough. I mean, for an 8-year-old to go through that, I mean, it's.
And we've had to, like, be really honest with her, because she is so smart.
We chose to. Like,
we chose to, and we
felt like it was better for her to just be honest with her about everything going on, because I'd rather her be able to learn how to process those emotions now. Than later on, and it be put on someone else.
Yeah. And I mean, she was 7 when this happened, and I think, like, you realize a lot of times that kids know what's going on more than we realize as adults. But she felt safe to tell us, and so it was like the floodgates open, and she was able to, like, release all these things that she felt like she had questions about, that she didn't know if she was safe there, that she didn't know what to make of. And so when she told us and we were able to answer those questions for her, it was like what we thought was going to be the most horrible thing she'd ever gone to was the start of her healing. Yeah. Because she was able to just let it off of her shoulders, give it to us, give it to God, and she can just be a kid. Yeah. And so while this is so challenging for her, and I pray and we pray that, like, they'll be reunited, and that, like, this will be a story that they have to tell one day, that they got through this. It's like right now, the way that she is, like, trusting God even in the waiting, I learned from her. Yeah. You know?
As an 8-year-old. Wow.
As an 8-year-old. I mean, and I just think, like, wow, like, you know, when I was a kid, I mean, thank God I had a really stable childhood, and I had really good parents, you know, but I'm just like, thank God she has God, because even when there's things that we don't have answers for, she can pray about it. And she really has so much faith. And then seeing, you know, Oliver, he prays for her mom. Like, we'll pray together, and he's like, I want to pray for Jade's mom that she'll get better. And, you know, I want to pray for Jade that she can see her again.
A lot of the stuff that she was seeing, and, you know, no 7 or 8-year-old should have to deal with that. And it's very frustrating, but at the same time, you know, I want to speak to her mom if she ever listens to this. It's like, I want you to understand that we together, we love you, and all we want is for you to get better. And we don't condemn you. We're not talking down about you. It's like, my goal and our goal together is for her, for you and Jade, and I'm speaking to her, for you and Jade to be together again. Because no kid should live without their mom or their dad. They should. A healthy child needs both, and that's what we want. And people think it's crazy all the time that we like, oh, because we're really quick to forgive, but we're also through this learning how to forgive, but also be very careful.
Yeah.
And but I mean, we're not going to give up, you know. And I've told her I think that Jade's mom will be saved one day.
Yeah,
I do believe it, you know. And it may take years. It took your mom how long?
like 30 years.
Yeah. So I mean, it may take years, but once again, she's not too far gone. She's not too far gone.
Not. Well, one thing, you know, y'all keep talking, you know, about Jade's faith and stuff, but y'all have instilled those values in her. Like, you know, like y'all have showed her what a Christ-like centered marriage is like and how to show love and taking her to church and putting her in those environments. So, I mean, it didn't just come out of nowhere, you know, like she's seeing it somewhere and she's reciprocating what she's seeing. And that's how she's learning the love of God. And I wanted to say this earlier, and we kind of got far from this, but you made the comment of like back then when you found out about the affair that Tyler had and stuff, you said that you felt in that moment God's presence, and like he just felt like you were in a hug and you just felt his presence all around you. And it's so awesome to hear that, like, that was a defining moment for you, but like you never knew God before. So now you feel him more than, like, you just know his presence is there because you experienced the life without him. Mm-hmm. You knew what it was like to walk through life without him. So now when you're on this side, you're like, wow, I really can do hard things. I can get through anything that comes my way because now I have this. You know, and that's something that can never be taken from you. And it's just truly a gift. But when you said that earlier, I was like, there's so many people that haven't experienced his presence yet. Yeah. And when they do, that without a shadow of a doubt, you'll know. When you're in the presence of the Lord, you know.
You know, we've talked about it before, and when you share God with others, if they're an atheist or whatever, or they just don't believe, or they're going through something, a lot of times they don't want to hear they don't want to hear about the Bible. Yeah. You know, they don't believe it anyway. They don't want to hear about all that stuff. Your experiences speak a lot more. Yes. You know, and you see it a lot in the Bible. It's like, this is what I've done. Or like Jesus going up and like, hey, you know, you've had 5 husbands. I know, you know, like, and just speaking to our experience and stuff. And so those are very important. But my job as a husband and as a father is to first love God more than anybody else. And that she didn't like that at first.
I couldn't relate. Yeah. I didn't know what it was about.
Yeah, but it's like my job is to love God first, put him before anybody else, because if I do that, then I am better for them. Yeah. And then love her just like Christ loves the church, and love her. And that, again, not just like, oh, I'm in love with you. No, it's love you. If I may not want to do this, but I'm going to do it because I love you. I may not, you know, I choose to love you and be a leader for her and for the kids. And that is my job. That is my role. And I don't care. And I'll tell you, I don't care if my kids grow up and tell me like, oh, Daddy, I'm the president of the United States. I don't care. Like, oh, Daddy, I made $1 million. I don't care about all that. What I care about is if they come to me and say, Daddy, sorry, that just means a lot to me. But Daddy, I because of you, because of Mama, I have a relationship with Christ. And that's what I care about. And I can tell you right now, LB's a little too young, but down to the 2-year-old, if you ask them who died for your sins, Jesus. Yeah. And that right there means more to me than anything else. I don't care about the rest. And, you know, and I pray about it. It's like, God, every day I pray, God, as I'm reading your word, as I'm praying, mold me into the man that you've called me to be. And mold me into the husband that you've called me to be. Mold me into the father that you've called me to be. And I don't want anything less. You know, I don't want to be average. I don't want to be just that, you know, just a normal person. I want to be an excellent father, and I want to be an excellent husband. And I will work every single day to do that. And, you know, I think the kids see that.
Yeah, and I know for me, whenever I got divorced and then I started getting closer to God, like I dealt with guilt, you know, for Oliver having to grow up in like a broken family. But then I realized, you know, everything that's happened with Jade. I'm like, you can't keep your kids from having a testimony. And if that's part of Oliver's testimony, if that's part of Jade's testimony, I can't keep that from happening. All I can do is show them in those times when it is dark, let God be the light and just lean on him, because that is something that has made my life infinitely better. And I look at where we are now and where I was just 6 years ago when we met, and I just cannot believe everything that God has done in my life.
Yes.
And I can't believe I lived 27 years without him.
I know.
You know?
Mm. What I was going to say is we've talked a lot about Jade and Ollie, but you got a few others. So
Yes.
let's give them a moment.
Oh,
let's talk
Joshy.
about
So we have Joshua, who
Yes.
is named for Joshua 1:9.
No, well, so
He's double named.
yeah, so his name's Joshua Ezra Carlson, and we call him Josh. We call him Joshy, but not like in the cute nickname. It's like, oh, Joshy. It's Josh E. So when I spell it, when I type it out, it's Josh space capital E period.
So we got married in Joshua Tree, California.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then also he has the verse Joshua 1:9
my
on
favorite
his arm.
verse.
Do not be afraid.
Yeah, and I was reading the story of Joshua and Caleb spying on the Canaanites, and I was very moved by their boldness and their trust in God to say, while the other 10 or 11 people were saying, hey, we don't need to go in there. We don't need to attack because they're huge, they're massive. And Josh and Caleb were like, no, we need to do this. We need to take it. Yep. And I told her, and I was like, I think we need to name this baby Caleb. And she was like,
I don't like
I
that
don't
name.
like Caleb.
And then I came up with Joshua, and he said that was the other spy.
Oh my gosh!
And then he has Joshua 1:9 tattooed on him. And then I was kind of like, okay, growing up as Jessica, that name is just really regular, and I don't know. But then we were in church, and Oliver was having a moment, and some lady brought me a book, and it was like after I'd shortly found out I was pregnant, and the book was Joshua. And I'm like, okay, like this baby is Joshua. So he's Joshua Ezra. And then we had Meadow Adela, and Meadows is my mom's maiden name, and Adela is Sydney, my business partner's middle name.
Stop! I did not know that. That is so special.
Yes,
Wow.
She's been there with me through all of this, and like just supported me through every season. So that's who she's named for. And then we had LB, which is little Brandon.
Little Brandon, little buddy,
little boy, little brother,
yeah,
little baby. So
I'm a little baby.
Little baby. So he's just LB, and he's Brandon Alexander Carlson Jr.
Nice.
And we have just been so blessed.
Yes.
She didn't want me to have a junior.
He had a whole different name picked out, and then right before I had this baby, I said, look at that man. I gotta name this baby after him.
My gosh.
If anybody deserves a junior, it's my man.
So are y'all gonna have more children?
She wants one more.
You want one more?
Don't let my parents hear that. I said the other day, oh my gosh, she's just getting so big. And my dad's like, why do you say it like that? And I'm like, because I just don't want him to grow up. He said, please don't have another baby. And I'm okay if I don't. I'm good with not. I'm happy with my 5. I don't know what's wrong with me, but baby fever lives within me.
And I'll tell you what, that doctor was wrong. I can still have babies.
Still have kids. And that is point proven.
Yes. Yeah. I touch her and we get pregnant.
I know. Think about a baby and maybe we'd be okay. I'm pregnant.
All right. Well, as we begin to close, is there anything else that maybe y'all want to hit or say or maybe advice?
The big thing for me now, and I'm not perfect. Obviously, I know that. There's a lot of things that I have done and struggled with. But a real passion for me is husbands and men, because I think that our country lacks godly male leadership, and I want to do what I can to change that, because obviously we see, there's a lot of broken families, and there's a lot of fathers that are not in the home, and that negatively affects kids and generations afterward. And so I want to do what I can to change that, and to bring fathers back into the home, men, families, and I'm very passionate about the male side of that, and helping guys be the leaders that they're supposed to be, and leaders for their kids and people that their kids can look up to. And so, I mean, if you're a guy out there and that's you in a broken relationship and you're a single dad or whatever, and you may not be living the way you should be, hey, I'm open. Come talk to me. I just want to hear. I want to help people, and I want to help guys be who they're called to be. And I ain't gonna condemn anybody. I ain't gonna judge anybody. I just want you to love Jesus. Yeah. I want you to love your kids and be a good dad and husband.
I would just say the same thing for any of my girls that have just found their identity in what other people think of them or mistakes that they've made. Like, please just sit that down, because the peace that you will feel when you give that over to God and just start to see yourself the way that he sees you is something that's so indescribable. And, you know, I still struggle at times with those things because we are human and we'll never be perfect in that way either. But God is love, and you will never fill that void with anything in this world except for his love. Yes. So
that's good. All right, guys. Well, this has been absolutely incredible. This whole story, you can truly see where God has just moved in both of your lives. Like, truly to watch you grow from not a relationship, not even really seeking God in any way, to then blossoming and coming on this podcast and just spitting scripture and just talking about the love of God and everything. It has just been incredible to witness your journey. And Brandon, I didn't really know you before, but it's been awesome to, you know, just experience you loving Jess and y'all's relationship together and your beautiful family. So guys, thank you so much for being here. This has been great.
Absolutely. Appreciate you inviting us on here.
Yes, absolutely. All right, guys, stay tuned, stay blessed, and we'll see you guys later.